Hi, I'm Peter DePaula with Republican Town Committee, and I'm sitting here with Matt O'Brien, a member of the Coventry Town Council, to ask some questions about the upcoming municipal referendum. So Matt, good morning. What I want to ask about is, tell us about what a municipal referendum is and what that means to our town.
Thank you for that question, Peter. A referendum is the mechanism by which the town's taxpayers gets to vote on a project that the town council has put forward that would require us to do bonding and borrow money. It's usually a larger expense, capital expense.
So when a municipal referendum comes forward, it is for a specific project. Am I understanding that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And it also details the exact amount that the town taxpayers are authorizing for the spending on that project and the bonding authority that the town receives if it passes.
All right, so if I understand that correctly, it means the taxpayers approve a certain amount for a certain project that the town is then obligated to pay off. So that obviously goes into what, a bonding process? Tell me about that.
Yes, so for example, this project would be a total of over $12 million. So in order to raise those funds, we would go to bond, and that would mean that we would be selling notes for a period of 20 years and then paying those off over that time.
Okay, so we're touching into the HVAC project for the high school, which, if I recall, was actually approved by the taxpayers for $11,070,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was on January 10th, 2023, excuse me.
And the project is running to what level today?
So they've already, as of August 25th of this year, they've spent over $12,446,000.
So the town is authorized to spend $11,070,000.
As
that
maximum.
authorization is from the taxpayers, but you said this project is already over budget. So where does that additional authorization come from?
So what happened was that immediately upon getting their original bids, they knew that the project was over the appropriated amount, the approved amount by the taxpayers of $11,070,000. They actually entered into a contract for $11,897,000, and then also included another rider for another $97,000. So what should have happened, in my opinion, there's only two things that should have happened. They should have not signed the contract, of course, that has to be clear, but they would have either changed the scope of the project to stay within the amount of approved funds, or they needed to go back to the taxpayers and get additional spending authority. They did neither. So what they've been doing basically is continuing to fund the project without authorization from the taxpayers, and it's been ongoing. So they signed this contract and they were already over. They've also added another $450,000 in additional change orders and additions since then. That's how they get up to the $12,446,000.
I see. So we've already spent more than we the taxpayers authorized. And this contract was signed by which authority? Who signed the original contract?
The town manager, at that time it was Jim Drum.
So Matt, why don't you talk about bonding? What does that mean from a town perspective and from a taxpayer perspective, as we all want to keep our town affordable, and as taxpayers we want to pay our fair share, but we want to make sure that that the money's being used wisely.
Well, bonding is long-term debt. We'll think of it that way. You're taking out a note on a project that's going to be paid off over 20 years, kind of like a mortgage.
Okay.
But there are upfront costs to bonding, as well as interest costs, throughout the life of the payoff.
Okay, so if we have a bond for a project, say a project from the past, and the project is complete, and there's funds left over from that project, what are our options? Pay down that debt so we can pay the bond off sooner, or do what with that extra bond money?
So I think there's a number of different options. One, as you suggested, I would think that that's a possibility. Certainly, that's not what the town of Coventry has done at least for the funds that are going to be utilized to pay off part of this project. The energy bond funds that they discuss were actually passed in 2018. And the original project, I assume, has been completed long ago. But the wording in the language in the bond resolution allows them to spend the money on projects related to what that purpose was over time. So they've been using those funds for other projects as well. For example, they used $100,000 to fund a plan to renovate the middle school, I think it was. So they used $100,000 of that bond fund without any further authorization from the town council to have the engineering company formulate a plan to renovate as new, which was a project that was never even discussed at the town council table or approved. So the bond funds that are going to be utilized in this particular project are coming from two different projects that have already been, are almost completed. The roof project is almost complete and there's surplus funds there, and the energy bond fund surplus is from the 2018 bond project.
Well, you raised two more good questions, or two more good points. One is, if there are funds left over from a referendum that has been approved by the taxpayers, who has the authority to access those funds for another purpose?
If it's over $100,000, the town council should have to go back to the town to get permission to repurpose those funds for an entirely different project. If it's a related project, what's been going on recently is that the School Building and Energy Efficiency Committee has authority to utilize some of those funds. So, for example, the Energy Bond Fund for projects as they've been moving through the years.
So you're saying I could actually authorize $99,999, and then I could use those funds for something?
Yeah, I've seen them utilized for ongoing other projects, yes.
Okay, as long as I stay under $100,000.
No, I'm not a lawyer, but that's my understanding.
Oh, okay, just good. So in the current language in the referendum, the two bond funds you mentioned, one the roofing project and the second being the energy fund, those are being added into this current HVAC referendum as part of the funding sources. Is that correct?
Yes. The January 10th, 2023 referendum, the explanatory text laid out exactly how they were going to utilize the state grant funds, what they expected them to be. They weren't yet, they were not yet granted by the state. And then the energy bond, they were going to use up to $1.4 million of that surplus. And the roof bond, they were going to use $1.3 million of the surplus that they anticipated from those projects.
So those bond funds plus the 6.6 million.
At that time, it was 6.3 that we anticipated.
Okay.
With the actual award in April of 2023 was for 6.6 million. It was $304,000 more than what we anticipated.
So the amount of new bonding that the taxpayers have to pay on is how much for the current state of the project as we know it?
The January 10th, 2023 referendum indicated that they would use between $2 and $2.1 million of new bonding on top of the repurposed bond funds that already existed and the state grant funds that they anticipated. The current referendum, the proposal that's on the table right now, would necessitate them spending a total of $3.168 million of new bonding on top of the repurposed funds, and there's a significantly increase in some of those, and the $304,000 increase on the state grant. So we're actually spending $1.1 million more of new bonding on top of what they were told that we were going to spend originally for this project when they passed it.
So Matt, help me understand the funding if we add the state grants and the remaining funds together. We combine those all together. Where are we with funding the HVAC project?
As compared to the original referendum
Yes.
expectation.
Yes.
So the state grant has actually been increased by $304,000, so that's positive. The roof bond remaining surplus is $285,000 more than the 1.3 million that they anticipated. But the energy bond funds are $113,000 less than the 1.4 million that they had originally anticipated when they were going to referendum on January 10th. So the total of those changes is a positive $476,438 that's available to help offset some of the increase of the cost. But on top of that, the taxpayers are going to be on the hook for another $1.1 million in new bonding on top of the original 2.1 million that they were told for the original referendum.
Wow. So the taxpayers approved $11,070,000, and now the combining all these funds together, we're at over $1 million more than where we started.
1.1.
So as I understand it, the original referendum that taxpayers approved was $11,070,000. The project as we know it today is $12,642,000. So we're over the original referendum by $1.572 million.
Yeah, round off $1.6 million more than the original referendum authorized.
So the additional bonding requirement for the taxpayers is how much?
Total would be $3.168 million. And that's 1.1 million more than the 2.1 you were promised in the first referendum.
So as an average taxpayer, this is very confusing. How do we decipher the referendum language as it reads today so we know how we should vote in November? Do we just support this referendum because it needs to pass, or do we say this referendum language needs to be much more clear so we understand it?
I think the resolution language is going to be changed, but how we explain it to the taxpayers is important to me. What they're currently discussing does not tell the taxpayers that we've actually been spending $1.372 million more than was authorized without authority to do so. It doesn't let them know that what we're doing now is trying to backfill for stuff that we've already been paying for with notes that we've been floating without authority to have spent that money, in my opinion. So I just want the taxpayers to understand really what happened. It seems like they're trying to whitewash this over and just say, oh, we're just transferring bonding authority from other projects, and it's not really going to cost you people any money, and it's just from overages. Well, it's also from bad acts on the part of either people in the town or the town council themselves.
My concern is, as a taxpayer, authorizing a very specific amount for this project, which was based on estimates provided by industry experts. And in less than a year, a contract was signed, a bid was accepted that far exceeded that amount. And again, I'm just trying to understand, if we pass this referendum, are we again allowing overspending to occur?
So first of all, the original contract was $932,000 more than the authorized spending limit. So day one, signing the contract put us in overspending with not enough funds to pay. The current referendum has $200,000 more than we've already spent in anticipation of additional costs before the project is finalized. So the intent is that would cover all of the additional expenses and that they wouldn't be coming back to the town for any further money beyond this.
But what if we say those are just normal cost overruns? I mean, who accounts for that, and who gives the authority to say it's okay to proceed?
Well, in this case, the only thing that I could find in the record, because I wasn't on the town council at the time all this occurred, is that the former town manager had given a very highly questionable interpretation of a charter section. It was section 8 under finance, and it was 8-I, And he interpreted that in a way that I can't find any reasonable way to agree. What he had said was that because we were receiving grant funds, state grant funds, then we could go over the amount that was approved at referendum. And that's not what it says, that's not the intent. And if that was the case, then in every project that we've ever approved that had state grant funds, they could have gone over the amount that we had authorized without further coming back to the town for more spending authority. It was found out, and that's how we got, that was said at the School Building Energy and Efficiency Committee, and then based on his recommendation, then they went forward and approved the acceptance of the bid beyond what was already approved. The town council, I couldn't find where they had questioned that before they, as they move forward, anywhere in the record anyway. But it was the bond council that came forward in 2024 and let them know that we're overspending and don't have the funds available and need to rectify that as quickly as possible.
As confusing as this sounds, I mean, it's very complicated, but it also sounds very confusing. But what is concerning is where there should be some guardrails for how we operate within the town. I presume there's been some outside counsel that's looked at this process. Has there been any feedback from outside counsel perhaps?
So our bond counsel has commented on this and kind of sternly let them know that the state grant funds are normally already inclusive in the project, and that, just because you have state grant funds doesn't allow you to add that on top of what's in the approved amount for bonding. And they very clearly state that we were overspending and we're beyond the funds that we were authorized to be spending and needed to rectify it quickly. That was in early 2024. They wanted it to be on the November 2024 ballot, and this town council did not choose to do that, and so they postponed. And then immediately after the date on which they would have had to pass the resolution to put it on the referendum passed, our bond counsel came back again with another very sternly worded dictate saying, you need to do this, and you need to do this quickly. You need to hold another referendum outside then the municipal ballot and take care of this. And they've not done that to date. Obviously, we're doing this now when the project's almost completed, and we're way over our spending authority.
Well, that's concerning on 2 points. One is that we're continue to be over our spending authority, and number 2, the project's not complete, so we don't even know the final number for the project until it's done. Is that correct?
Yeah, but the way we're doing business right now is that they're going to spend all the money, complete the project, and then tell you how much you have to pay. They're not asking you for authority to spend that amount of money before they have chosen to do the project, in the way that it's now formulated. So that's what's wrong.
That's troubling news. Well, Matt, thank you for the time. I think this is, there's a lot of information. It is very complicated and very hard, I think, for an average taxpayer to really digest, to understand. So come October 20th to November 4th, that we can make a sound decision. Should we approve this referendum as it is written, or should we get more clarity to the referendum, or wait till this project is done so we have an exact number?
The town is obligated to make the payments that we've done, but the authorization has been improper, if not illegal, in my opinion. I think that the fundamental errors, if you want to call them errors, the actual actions that have led to this include not overseeing, not proper oversight, not doing due diligence, not being concerned with the details of agreements, not being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. I mean, this is, I can't fathom, as a former chairman of the Finance Committee who's been through a number of these issues, how people don't read all the language that's being put forward or have an understanding of exactly what they're authorizing. And it's shameful, and I believe that it will change going forward because we're forcing this out in the open, and now people are starting to appreciate what's actually going on.
Well, Matt, thanks for your time and your insights. You provided a lot of details, and I'm sure, I know for myself, I'll have to track this in a lot more detail and do some more homework. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.